Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. So you may know about the Commander's Quarters from our budget deck techs or our budget staples list, but today we're going to be doing something different. Today's going to be the first video of a series on the budget top 5. Now these top 5 lists can be about certain cards, different strategies, or even a wide variety of other things. A quick note about these top 5 lists is that these choices and rankings are completely subjective. So whatever cards or decks that I bring up in rank are completely based off of my own opinion, and I know that there are other opinions out there. And the prices for those cards and decks are powered by our sponsor, TCG Player. Before we get started, make sure you go click that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on the latest Commander's Quarters videos. Alright, so let's get into today's episode. Today's top 5 list is going to be the top 5 commanders that you can get for a quarter or less. So in this list, I'm going to take you through some very affordable commanders that are a lot of fun to build around and a lot of fun to play with. So let's start our list out at number 5. Coming in at 5th place is going to be Yargle, Glutton of Urborg. Yargle is a 9/3 frog spirit that costs 4 and a black. And that's pretty much it. He actually has no abilities. But despite being a vanilla commander, he's actually grown to be very popular in the commander community. And with that 9 power, he's actually very interesting to build around. So when we go about building Yargle, we're going to build with a Voltron strategy in mind. We're going to pump him with cards like Blackblade Reforged, Fire Shrieker, and Loxodon Warhammer. With a Voltron strategy, we're looking to kill our opponents with commander damage. We only need Yargle to get to 11 power in order for him to kill in 2 hits. And with this deck, it's even possible for him to get to over 21 power so he can kill in 1 hit. But we need to make sure that we can use that power and get through with our damage. So we're going to be using cards like Prowler's Helm, Gruesome Deformity, and Dragon Shadow to give him some evasion. Our evasion mostly comes in the form of equipment and auras, and the types of evasion that we give him differ depending on the card. We can give him Flying, Fear, Intimidate, or just straight up make him unblockable. It doesn't matter how we do it as long as we can get that damage through and kill our opponents quickly. But while we're suiting Yargle up, our opponents aren't just going to sit there and take it. So we need to make sure that we have some different ways to protect our commander from our opponents. So we're going to be running cards like Blessing of Leeches, Rush of Vitality, and Demonic Vigor. By regenerating, giving him indestructible, and returning him to our hand when he's in trouble, we can save Yargle from dying. Because the worst thing that can happen to you in a Voltron strategy is that your commander dies. Yargle's a lot of fun, and many of your opponents might not take him seriously at first. But in the right deck, he can be very powerful and a ton of fun for you to play. There are even ways for you to give Yargle Infect to kill your opponents, but you'll have to watch the deck tech on that one. Alright, it's time to move on to number 4 in the list. Coming in at 4th place is going to be another Voltron commander. It's Shu Yun, the Silent Tempest. Shu Yun is a 3/2 human monk that costs 2 and a blue. He has prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay Boros. If you do, target creature gains double strike until the end of the turn. Shu Yun is a different kind of Voltron than Yargle is. Whereas Yargle starts off with a ton of power, Shu Yun does not. But Shu Yun makes up for that with his abilities. With this deck, we're going to want to cast a ton of non-creature spells to get those prowess triggers. And by casting those non-creature spells, we can give him double strike just by paying Boros. So we're going to be playing a lot of cheap spells in this deck that pump Shu Yun. Brute Force, Titan Strength, and Unstable Mutation are each pump spells that do it in different ways. Some are going to be standard pump spells just like Brute Force where it just pumps him. Others have a little bit of built-in utility like Titan Strength. And then they're going to be auras like Unstable Mutation. And the goal of this deck is speed, so the cheaper these spells are, the better. And once we get Shu Yun up to 11 power or more, we can just activate his ability to give him double strike. This commander truly lives up to his reputation as the one-punch man. Like the Yargle deck though, we're going to need some evasion in order to get Shu Yun through. We're going to be playing things like Distortion Strike, Leap, and Aqueous Form. So we're going to use a combination of cheap instants, sorceries, and even auras to give him evasion. On top of that, some of these spells give us additional utility like being able to cast them again for free, or drawing a card, or making us scry one. But each and every single one of them are going to be cheap. Again, we need to kill our opponents quickly with this deck so we can't waste a lot of mana on evasion spells. Finally, we need to make sure that we can protect our commander. We're going to be investing a ton of resources into getting Shu Yun pumped up and giving him evasion. So we need to make sure that he's going to stay alive when he's attacking. We're going to be playing things like Emerge Unscathed, Apostle's Blessing, and Faith Shield. We can either make him indestructible, or we can just straight up give him protection from a certain color. And those spells that give him protection from a color can even give him evasion in certain circumstances. If one of our opponents only has green creatures and we give him protection from green, he is unblockable to them. Shu Yun is a very explosive and very dangerous commander. He's a great commander to build around since he can use a lot of cards that don't see a lot of play in other decks. And being in control of the one-punch man is an amazing experience. Alright, now it's time to go on to number 3. Coming in at 3rd place is going to be Jodah Archmage Eternal. Jodah is a 4/3 human wizard with flying that costs 1 blue, red, white. He has you may pay WUBRG rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. So Jodah can help us cheat on spells, and we can use any spell in the game since he's a 5-color commander. So we're going to build around Jodah with a high-powered spell-slinging deck. So after we fix our mana and get Jodah out, we're going to want to wipe the board. But when we do, we want to make sure that we keep Jodah alive. We're going to be playing Wraths like Doom Blast, Ingarrick's Wake, and Urza's Ruinous Blast. There are many Wraths in Magic that are conditional, and we can use these to our advantage. Again, we want to do our best to keep Jodah on the board so we can cast more powerful spells. We're going to cast a ton of high-value spells like Brilliant Ultimatum, Sandworm Convergence, and Clone Legion. These are all cards that have very restrictive mana costs, so many decks can't use them. But in our deck, it really doesn't matter if a spell costs 7, 8, 9, 10 mana because they all cost 5 to us. And with this deck, we can even play multiple high value spells in the same turn. We can even tutor for those cards or bring them back with cards like Conflux, Behold the Beyond, or All Sun's Dawn. So no matter what the situation is, we can go find a response for it. And since we're going to be able to cast more high value spells than our opponents, we can easily outpace them. With access to all 5 colors, this deck is a ton of fun to build around and a lot of fun to pilot. If you're looking for a big spell slinging commander, I highly recommend watching this deck tech. And now it's time to move on to number 2 in our list. Coming in at second place is Tatyova Benthic Druid. Tatyova is a 3/3 merfolk druid that costs 3 green-blue. She has whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Ramping is important in pretty much every single commander deck, but Tatyova even rewards you for it. She keeps us alive by gaining us that life and puts us way ahead of our opponents by drawing us a ton of cards. So of course we're going to be playing cards that help us ramp like Sakura Tribe Elder, Explosive Vegetation, and Colony Heart Expedition. We're going to be running a ton of creatures, sorceries, and even enchantments that help us ramp. And again, for each land that comes into play, we'll draw a card, and those can be more ramp spells that we can play. Tatyova is just an incredible engine. But we're going to go further than just sticking to the traditional ramp spells with this deck. We're going to be playing cards like Rites of Flourishing, Ghirapur Orrery, and Summer Bloom. We have a wide variety of spells in this deck that are going to let us play more than 1 land in a turn. And again, by playing those lands, we'll draw into even more lands that we can play. And with all those lands, we're going to hit a ton of landfall triggers. We're going to get a lot of value out of things like Zendikar's Royal, Rampaging Balos, and Royal Elemental. So with these cards, we can either generate our own creatures or we can steal our opponent's creatures. We've also got other ways to finish our opponents off, but you'll have to check out the budget deck tech for that. Now it's finally time to go on to number 1. Coming in first place is going to be Zada Hedron Grinder. Zada is a 3/3 goblin ally that costs 3 in red. She has whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only her, copy that spell for each other creature you control that spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. Now at first, Zada can be very confusing to build around. Basically with this deck, you want to first go wide so you have a lot of targets for your spells. So we're going to be playing things like Goblin Instigator, Dragon Fodder, and Hordling Outburst. We're going to be casting a lot of cheap things to get a ton of tokens onto the battlefield quickly, because again, the more targets that we have for our spells, the better. Now red isn't known for card draw, but in this deck it is. With all those targets, we're going to cast things like Crimson Wisp, Expedite, and Renegade Tactics. So for each creature that we control, we're going to get to draw a card. It's not uncommon to be drawing upwards of 10 cards in a turn with one of these spells. And the best part about it is that these spells either cost 1 or 2 mana. And drawing 10 cards for only 1 mana is unheard of. So we've got a ton of creatures in play, we've drawn a ton of cards, now what do? Well, we're going to pump our team to finish all of our opponents off at once. We're going to cast things like Reckless Charge, Brute Strength, and Downhill Charge. We're running standard pump spells in this deck, but we also have some pump spells that have some utility to them too. There are even some pump spells that let us scry or draw cards. So if we need to keep digging for better cards, we can. There are even some ritual and combo cards in this deck, but again, you'll have to go to the deck tech to see it all. Now obviously in a top 5 list, some picks have to be left out. But I want to make sure I go through some of the cards that just missed the cut, so let's go through the honorable mentions. With the Yasova Dragonclaw, you can build a deck that revolves around stealing your opponent's creatures. Now you can attack with those creatures for some value, you can sacrifice them, or you can even gain control of them permanently. Then there's Slimefoot the Stowaway, which is going to be a Saproling tribal deck. Since Slimefoot is basically a Zulaport Cutthroat for Saprolings, you're going to drain your opponents out. And finally we've got Wrath Capuchin Ship's Mage. Now with this deck, you can build around the commander in a variety of ways. You can build around him focusing with artifacts or even with just legendary permanents. And by casting all your spells with Flash, you're going to have a ton of options during your opponent's turns. And with that, our show is coming to a close, but I really want to hear about what you guys think about these top 5 picks, so why don't you let me know in the comments below. When you're buying commanders like these, make sure you're doing so on TCGplayer.com, because not only are you going to get great prices, but they also sponsor this show. So by supporting them, you're helping support the Commander's Quarters. The link to all these commander decks can be found in the description below. And make sure you're following the Commander's Quarters on both Twitter and Facebook so you can get an early hint on who the next commander just might be for our deck techs. Both Facebook and Twitter links can be found in the description. Also in the description is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. If you enjoyed this top 5 list, make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel. And also make sure you check out our episodes on budget deck techs and budget staples. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.